Welcome to another episode of North of the Arc. We are a Toronto Raptors-based show, and we also talk about the NBA because you can't not talk about the NBA, presented to you by Jackpot City Casino. I'm your host, Noor Zainab. Here, as always, my favorite, Chris Walder, and we're recording this on a Tuesday, January 27th, so keep that in mind whenever you get to watch it. Before we jump into the actual world of the NBA, make sure you subscribe. You hit us on YouTube, smash that like button, follow us, comment, find us everywhere on the socials. We're on Twitter, Instagram, even myself and Chris are on Twitter and Instagram, so find us there as well. And before we jump into everything, Chris, how you feeling? How's the Raptors?
I'm doing good. Life is good. We obviously had a pretty good Western Conference road trip. Before we even get into the basketball, Noor, because I know when you and I did a podcast way back when, I learned that you are a huge professional wrestling fan. You loved the John Cena's back in the day. He's obviously retired now. You know, shout out to John, hell of a career, multiple-time world champion. But wrestling was in Toronto on Monday night at Scotiabank Arena. Our boy Scotty Barnes was sitting ringside. He had the cell phone out filming, a little bit more advanced than when LeBron James was famously there. He had like the pop-up phone or whatever, like the old school phone. But Scotty was there rocking the Toronto Raptors championship belt. And I kind of want to ask you something, because we know our Raptors lore. We know the big names, the small names here and there. Is there anyone from the past or present on the Toronto Raptors that you think would have been like a tremendous professional wrestler, whether it's on the mic, whether it's in the ring? Who do you think had the chops to cut it in the squared circle, Noor?
I love this question. As you all, I mean, you guys want to know this actually, but as Chris knows, we are both like big wrestling fans and we bonded over this as well. And my favorite one, obviously, as you know, is John Cena. I think though, one thing you have to keep in mind with wrestling is whichever wrestler you are, there's going to be a time where you might turn a little evil. So I'm just thinking to myself, which of the Raptor has like a, maybe like an alternate persona that can turn on and become the heel for an audience. And honestly, I'm thinking far back and wide. I could tell you probably Kyle would be the best at that because he's been hated, he's been loved, he's done both parts. Freddie would, I think, be amazing on the mic. He would demolish anybody. He might not even fight, but I think on the mic, he would be insane. But I think in terms of both being able to have that athleticism to play, but also be super entertaining, and you also know he's tied and he understands what WWE is all about, would be Scotty Barnes. I can already see him. I feel like he would have like a Batista-style entrance with, fireworks going in the background. He's just making sure everybody knows it's his time now. But it could be anybody, but I feel like it's Scotty. I think he would have made the best, the ones that the fans like, but I also think he would have made such a good heel. And that's what it's all about. Like if you watched wrestling and as we do, you know that it can be great one day, but they can be hated the next day. So you just need to know how to be able to handle that. Scotty, number one in that position for me. What do you think?
We're already booking the Scotty Barnes heel turn. My favorite player, the guy I've been chronicling on Twitter, already turning him into a bad guy. I've actually put a lot of thought into this question, and I was kind of considering like some under the radar names that would fit this category the best. And the name that immediately jumped to mind is the Red Rocket, Matt Bonner. And the reason that I think of that was because, Raptors fans that have been watching the team as long as I have remember that moment against, I believe it was the Minnesota Timberwolves when Kevin Garnett was on that team. And Matt Bonner took him down with two hands, got in a little bit of a scuffle. Bonner gets ejected from the game. And what does he do while he's exiting? Starts high-fiving fans, starts pointing at the crowd. The only thing that was missing at that point was the pyro. It was such a cool moment. And it kind of also takes me back to an episode of my old podcast, the Walder Sportscats, that I did during COVID. I had Matt on as a guest. I had him for maybe 45 minutes at the time. He was up in the mountains. He was doing coverage for San Antonio. He had to make the drive down to cover the game at the time. I had, 3/4 of an hour of his time. He spent, no exaggeration, like 35 minutes of it talking about an episode of WCW Nitro that he attended back in the day. Because he went through my Twitter and noticed that I was a wrestling fan. And then he was like, "Oh, dude, I have to
Agreed.
tell you this story about when I was younger and I was sitting along the entrance ramp and I was there catching like the DDPs and the stings of the time. I wanted to steer the conversation in towards like basketball, which is why I had him there. But all he wanted to do was talk about wrestling. So shout out to Matt Bonner, currently hosting the Raptors show. Come on our show. That'd be great. We have a lot of wrestling we have to talk about, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, he already has that in the past experience with you. So I think, Chris, reach out anytime. He's probably, don't even go to him with like the face of an NBA show. Be like, we're just talking wrestling. And he'll be so happy to come through.
Exactly.
And you know what? It's actually a great pick as well because he already has a nickname for the ring too, Red Rocket. And he could dress up as a Red Rocket, they'll go crazy on costumes. So I see that working out for him too. But as you were talking, before we move on, sorry, I have a sleeper pick as well, because you mentioned a part about being able to entice fans, but also fight opponents. Serge Ibaka.
Mhm.
What am I doing? Serge Ibaka
Yeah.
would have been a great, wrestler as well. He could have been on the mic, could have been dissing you in French, dissing you in Spanish, dissing you in any language that you know. And on top of that, he would be the crowd favorite. I think he would have the opposite effect of Cena, where, Cena is loved by the crowd, but also hated by the crowd. And he's just trying to be a good guy. But I think Ibaka, if he could try to be a bad guy, but they would still love him because he's just so lovable no matter what. But I didn't see Quickley on your list, huh? The past few games
No.
didn't make it for you?
No, I know he killed it on this road trip, the reigning NBA player of the week. I don't know if he has it to be like, maybe he could be like a Rey Mysterio type, like jumping off the top rope, do like a 619, maybe call it like the 40-pointer or whatever, like he did the most efficient 40-point night in NBA history. Like, where the heck did that come from? But I like that Serge Ibaka pick, one of the most jacked Toronto Raptors in franchise history. Could have been called him like Mafuzi. He's not about fighting. He's about art. I'm already like writing his
What about
slogans
a
for
whole
him. But
persona, a full character and everything? He would have gone so deep into it. And what prompted me that answer as well was just picturing him. When he had that, I forget who he was choking, but he was in a game with the Raptors, and he was against the post, and he had somebody up in the neck, and he's like pushing them back there, and I'm like, oh my God, Ibaka he's already ready to fight people on the court. Like, just give him a ring. He's ready, no problem. But I'm glad you mentioned
his
Emmanuel
finishing
Quickley.
move. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned Quickley and his past few games and his 40-point night against the Warriors. Nobody expected that. I think he was actually, and he probably still is on the chopping block, but as of right now, Chris, just talking about his past few games, 23, 20, 18, 40, 9, that was the game when he came back after his 2-game absence, but then still 18, 20, 17. Do you think at this point the Raptors can find some value in his game and keep him? Or do you think, if anything, now with his game going so well, he would be a great trading block?
Well, here's the thing with potentially moving quickly is that the people that seem most interested in doing that are on social media. We haven't really got like any sort of an indicator that the organization is actively trying to move him, because they just signed him to this long-term deal. He's locked in for the next 3 seasons at $97.5 million. He's consistently making 32.5 over the next 3 years. And then all of a sudden, when everyone is ready to kind of bury the guy and say, man, we need to anoint Jamal Shed as the next starting point guard of the team, without even realizing that we don't have another point guard if we were to trade quickly, unless it was for another point guard to back up Shed, who's still, young in this league, relatively inexperienced, but then quickly becomes the NBA player of the week, puts up these incredible numbers on a Western Conference road trip, which personally exceeded my expectations. I did not foresee the team stringing together the record that they did. Some huge wins, especially just recently against the Oklahoma City Thunder, which for my money was one of the most entertaining regular season basketball games that I've seen in quite some time. But if there was ever a stretch that was sorely needed to kind of regain confidence in the fan base, Quickley found that at the most opportune time possible, especially with the trade deadline being around the corner. And lest we forget, and I was kind of looking at like the statistical reasons as to why we should keep Quickley. The Raptors sit 26th in 3-point efficiency at 34.3%. Quickley is just one of 4 players on the roster currently shooting better than 36% from behind the arc, and 2 of those guys AJ Lawson and Jamison Battle are not necessarily consistent presences in the rotation. Sandro Memikhalishvili is the other player. He's obviously kind of garnered himself a steady role on this team, especially with Jakob Poeltl out of the lineup. But if you get rid of Quickley, unless you're bringing in some sort of a sniper who's shooting 40% or better from distance, you're going to even plummet even further because Quickley has been one of your more consistent shooters. And then, like I was alluding to earlier, the fact that, again, unless you're bringing in a point guard, you're thrusting Jamal Shed into that starting role and maybe asking more point guard responsibilities from someone like Scotty Barnes. I don't think that's a formula for success. I think the Raptors, especially coming off this road swing, maybe if they went, 1-3 or kind of split it down the middle, maybe it didn't work out and they kind of took a hit in the standings, maybe they'd be more, open to trading Quickley or at least exploring the market, see what's out there. But for right now, I mean, again, you can't argue with an NBA player of the week. It could be a flash in the pan, but I would keep Quickley, to be quite honest.
I completely agree with you. I think at this rate too, it's also about the shooting, right? Like if you have guys on your team that can make shots, and you saw that against OKC. OKC, I would say, would be it's a small sample size because it's just OKC. I understand that, but the fact that it's the best team in the West, it's the best defensive team as well, and you're going shot for shot in the fourth quarter and you come out alive and you win that. And, Quickley hit 2 back-to-back threes in that game as well. I think the biggest part of what I'm seeing from Quickley's game is the fact that I just don't trust him in the position of having to lead an offense. I think having to generate offense and create ball movement, maybe that's just not his best strength pieces to have. But when you see him in a position where he's told to just catch and shoot, when he's told to be on the corner and wait for the ball to come to him and make the best out of him just for himself, at those moments is where he shines. And we saw that with the Knicks as well. That's why we were okay with getting, letting OG go and getting him back for that value, because you get the shooting with Immanuel Quickley on your team. And as you said too, I think Jamal Shed's great as well in terms of the assist numbers that he pulls up. I think I was looking at it and he's only about like half an assist point behind Quickley, and he plays 10 less minutes, sorry. So you can also even make the argument that they could even play together, where you have Jamal Shed, who's kind of honing in on the offense and making the ball movement happen. And then you have Quickley there, who's making space happen for you as well, because you know that he can spread the floor, he can create shots, and he can make those shots at the same time. And I think what was wrong with him was just the fact that we were expecting too much from him. And I understand this team in the past has been a team where all these players have been interchangeable. They've been positionless. And even with Scotty now, like Scotty, he can put him anywhere and he's going to give you the most productive night in that position, which is amazing to see. But there's still some guys, especially with guys that we've drafted, not the guys that we've, I would say like honed in on and developed, such as Quickley, because we got him as he was already developed, where they're not as interchangeable. So you have to understand where their strengths and weaknesses are. And in that sense, I think he's the best at that position. He kind of reminds me, not of Freddie, but just the position that Freddie went through as well, where we would give him the ball as point guard and he would kind of just be like, oh, what's happening here? And the second he would go there shooting guard, we're like, oh my God, that's a whole different player. Like he's going back to back for threes and he's just getting his offense up out of nowhere. So in that regard, I don't even think the Raptors will trade him. I think at this rate, they need the shootings. And after that stretch and 40-point game against the Warriors, I mean, how he handled the West it just speaks on its own for me, I would say. And the way that he's playing right now, I even wonder, I'm like, does he want to be traded or does he want to stay? Like, what is this? What are these huge performances for? Is it because you're like, no, don't trade me, make me stay here? Or are you like, okay, here's what I can do? Call on me. What do you think that is, Chris?
Look, if you were to move him, his value is probably the highest it's been ever since he came over from the New York Knicks. So if there was a time to trade him, you could probably get the most bang for your buck. But again, like we've been alluding to, Quickley isn't your typical prototypical point guard. He's kind of like a 2 masquerading as a 1. And the good thing is that you have a bunch of playmakers on this roster like Barnes, like Barrett, like Shed, who can get you those assist numbers, move the basketball in transition, get easy buckets at the net. Quickley isn't someone who necessarily cuts. Like we've had point guards who know how to get to the basket in the past. Fred VanVleet kind of falls into that category. Kyle Lowry with his size, with his low center of gravity, that's always worked out for him as well. And even like well before that, like the TJ Fords and the Jose Calderons of the world, like we've been spoiled with very consistent, very efficient point guard play over the years. And there was a time when people were doubting whether or not Quickley could be that type of player, because when his three-point shot wasn't falling, which is definitely not the case now, then his deficiencies were starting to become more glaring, and we were wondering whether or not this deal that we signed him to, whether we were going to get a return on that investment. But for right now, the going is good. Everything looks great. Everyone's doing the, the call five pose behind the scenes. Everyone's kind of like lifting up, Quickley, metaphorically, of course, and saying like, he's our guy. He's made big plays for the Raptors, especially like those two major shots against Oklahoma City, the 3-pointers that he made. Like he's coming up clutch for Toronto. And they just need more of this on a more consistent level. There's going to be times where he kind of falls off a cliff. He gives you 6, 7, 8 points, maybe not a ton of assists, goes 2 for 13 from the field. That's just inevitable in basketball. I think we just kind of have to accept that. But for right now, again, Quickley is our guy, and I don't foresee that changing unless out of the blue, like some sort of major deal comes. And we kind of talked about this on the first episode of the show. Like, would I move Quickley for John Morant, who the Raptors have since come out and said, we're not interested in him. We're willing to make a package for him. We were kind of proven right where we said, let's just stick with Quickley, and it's kind of paid off, especially during this road trip, which I also forgot that the Lakers game was a part of that road trip. Kind of put that off in the back burner because, Murray Boyles got hurt and it wasn't the best performance, especially in the second half. But yeah, going 4-1 in the West, a huge deal for this team.
We talked about Quickley, who was on this trip, who has been absolutely amazing, but I think we have to give our flowers also to Scottie Barnes and to Sandra Mamu. Scottie, we already know he does everything right on the court. Not just right, but he's involved in every single play. And you might be a sheet watcher, you might be a scoreboard watcher, but if you're doing that, you're not seeing the entirety of Scottie Barnes as an athlete, as a basketball player, because his hands, his imprints are all over the game everywhere, whether it's offense or defense, he does everything right. And that we already know that, though. That is just who Scottie is. He's interchangeable. He's positionless. He just thrives whatever you throw at him. But then on the other side, I have been so impressed by Sandra Mamu. I call him Mamu because my language is Urdu, and in Urdu, Mamu means uncle. So for me, he's just Uncle Sandro. And he does the way that he has showed up for this Raptors team, where without Pirtle, without having much assistance in the center position, not a lot of people there to help you with size, because they don't really have the size to begin with. But the way that he showed in and showed out, and not just in the East, but especially I would say in that West Coast trip. We talked about it last episode as well, where of course the East it's challenging, it's talented, but it's super open, whereas the West is just heavily stacked. And for them to do that against huge teams they lost against the Lakers, but he still showed up against the Lakers, against OKC, against the Blazers. All that stuff is it's showing me that their hard work is finally turning into wins, and which is great because the trade deadline's coming up and these guys want to make sure that they're not touched and they're not going anywhere. But before we jump into that, let's take a break. Head to jackpotcity.ca and catch your bonus today. Play like a champ, win like a champion. Chaos or calm, Jackpot City keeps you in the action. Jackpot City has tons of slot games, massive jackpots, and bonuses that keep the action going while we keep the conversation rolling. So head to jackpotcity.ca, grab your welcome bonus, and play responsibly. Now let's play some slots while I talk to you about Kawhi Leonard and why he's my favorite player of all time. It's not just because of his basketball games. It's not just because he's a great player. Not just because I don't know him personally, but it's not even about all of that. It's actually more so about how he doesn't care about anything else. If you watch him ever walk up to a game in the tunnel where everybody next to him, Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, they're all dressed up nicely. He comes in a Nike sweatsuit that he probably just got from his team orientation day. That's what I like. That's what you want to see. Someone who doesn't care about anything that's happening, off court. He's just in it, ready to do whatever he can do for on-court production. Now, guys, this has been fun. I can't stay here for too long, but check out jackpotcity.ca for anything fun. All the great stuff is right there. And let's head back to the show. All right, Chris, the NBA trade deadline happening very, very soon. As you know, chaotic time in the league, chaotic time for everybody. But there's three main names that I'm looking at right now. And I think everyone's wondering and figuring out what's going to happen with them down the line. The first one I want to bring up for you and ask what's going to happen with him, Mr. Anthony Davis of the Mavericks. He got traded there from the Lakers. He's barely really had any much to do there, much to say, much to perform. So I wonder for the Mavericks at this point, would they look at it from both ways where it's, oh, well, he hasn't done much for us right now, so we can trade him? Or would it be the opposite side where it's, we haven't seen him do much, so let's keep him and let's see what he can do once we have the other guys there?
One of the worst trades in NBA history is looking worse and worse by the day, because Luka Doncic is out there in Los Angeles, out there in Hollywood, putting up MVP-esque numbers. And Anthony Davis, his big claim to fame in Dallas is that he's sitting more often than he's competing, which has kind of been the story of his career. Injuries have taken over. One of the most promising, an all-time power forward. The guy's going into the Basketball Hall of Fame. But the last thing you want to see is kind of injuries derail such a legendary career, and maybe it will ultimately lead to him retiring sooner than we perhaps all envisioned. But for Dallas, they do have to start looking to the future after this catastrophic mistake that they made. Nico Harrison's out the door. So what do you do with the assets that you have? And I thought it was a no-brainer that Anthony Davis was going to be gone at the trade deadline. Get what you can, get a young piece, get some draft capital, get whatever you can, and just start anew with Cooper Flag as your new franchise cornerstone, which he already kind of technically is. I mean, Kyrie Irving's still in the mix, of course. Klay Thompson's there, but Cooper Flag's your guy. Now, I don't see any way that Davis is going to be moved without getting kind of swindled in the end. Because with the way that his contract is, and I was kind of looking up what his deal is currently. So he's locked in through next season. He can become an unrestricted free agent in 2027. But again, the issue is that he's injured. He just hurt his finger, I believe, and he's going to be sidelined at least until after All-Star weekend. So any team that's acquiring him potentially goes in with the mindset that he's not going to be playing at least immediately, which is fine. That's kind of the story of Davis's career. If he's traded, it makes more sense to do it during the summer because I feel like teams would be more desperate to make kind of like that big home run swing to bring on someone like Davis, especially after the playoffs. Maybe like a contender for the championship falls short and they look at Dallas and they say, maybe Davis is that missing ingredient that can get us over the top. So I think that's far more likely, is that they hold on to Davis. I think he still ends up playing some games for him, maybe see what him and Irving and Flag, what that dynamic looks like. Personally, right now, I don't see him getting traded, but if he is traded, look for it to happen during the summer.
I agree with you, but I also wonder, I think in the long term, especially right now too, just in the sense of what's happening and what's there on the market for the Anthony Davis, I think there'll always be a team, as you said, who is going to be willing to take that risk, even though we know that he's half the year he's probably injured, not going to play. But I think the other half of the year when he's not injured, he's showing you why he's so sought after, and he's showing you why he's still one of the best players in the league. At that point, I mean, even the Raptors, who could really use some depth at that center position, could go for someone like Anthony Davis. But I would make the argument from the Mavericks point of view, it really depends on when Kyrie's return looks like and when he's going to be back. But they need to give that team a shot. I would want to see what that team looks like with Anthony Davis, with Cooper Flag, with Kyrie Irving. On paper, that looks like the perfect team. You have Kyrie Irving there who's running the ball, the best point guard in the league, probably still to this day. You have Anthony Davis, who's when healthy could be one of the best centers in the league. We saw what he did with LeBron. Anytime he was not injured. On the other side, Cooper Flag, the city's already given him the keys, and we've seen what he can do. And once he's around guys like Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis on the floor together, that opens up so much space for him. It makes me want to cry. Like, I want to see what that will look like for all of them, because they're almost so perfectly situated in their own positions, where you have Anthony at the center, you have Kyrie at the 3-point line, running the ball, right? And then you have Cooper just completely spacing the floor for everybody. So the other two guys, I'll be on the court with them at all times, will be feasting. They'll be having the best time of their life. So I think at this point, Nico Harrison, he's gone now, but this city and this team, they need to give this version of a roster a shot, because on the other side, I'm not sure what they'll get back for Anthony Davis.
Yeah, look, again, the worst trade, one of the worst deals in NBA history. It's got to suck having to watch Doncic out there in Laker country, killing it and being in that playoff mix right now. And to all the Toronto Raptors fans that were pestering me on my timeline and saying, man, why on earth would you not want to make a deal for AD? Get rid of Pirtle, get off of Barrett's contract. Maybe that kind of would entice Dallas. No, Anthony Davis is not, this is not the Kawhi Leonard situation where all of a sudden you're going to bring him on board and you're going to be instantly into that title mix. Because I think Toronto is like a fringe contender right now. I don't think Davis puts you there, especially if he's going to be on the bench more often than he's going to be playing. So hard pass on that front.
You know, but for the Raptors, I do like him there. I think in terms of the contendership, I don't think he makes you a contender. However, we've seen the Raptors and we've seen their health program. We've seen the doctors, what they can do. Kawhi came back here after a busted knee and he won us a championship because of our staff. So I wonder if we have the magical touch, Alex McKinney, like someone there who can still kind of make sure that we can keep Anthony Davis as healthy as possible. Because I think when he's healthy, I do believe that we have the right roster construction to perhaps maybe get the best out of him. It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to stay healthy. But then also, as you said, what you give up to get back for him. If you're giving up Pirtle and you're getting Anthony Davis and Anthony Davis is injured, who's playing center position for the Raptors? Maybe Scotty Barnes.
Yeah,
right?
Davis and Ingram and Barnes would kind of like be too much clogging, you know, around the basket. And Davis, he would be a welcome addition in the sense that if you're playing New York in the playoffs, he'd look great against Towns or against Detroit, against the monster that Jalen Duren has turned into. Having a guy who can give you 20 and 10 in his sleep, albeit with his health concerns, is a huge asset for Toronto. But again, maybe I'm just being the pessimistic guy on this front. I do see Davis staying with Dallas ultimately.
I think I'd like that for the city of Dallas as well. They've gone through a lot. They've gone through too much. Yeah, they've been through way too much. Maybe at this time, let's just see what this version of the roster would look like. But as talking about the Raptors, who the Raptors could trade for, what about Giannis? He's still out there. Every year, he's making noise. I think he just loves drama. Something about Giannis, he just wants to be in the news. He wants to be like, where am I going to go next? I don't know. And it ends up being, Milwaukee year after year. He must love the cheese there or something. I don't know what's going on. But what do you think, Chris? Is it finally the year that we see some motion for Giannis? Or is this just once again another smokescreen to distract us from a bad Bucks team?
Yeah, he ain't coming here. I would love it. To be honest, I mean, the Masai Ujiri factor was kind of like giving me that sliver of hope that just because of their pre-existing relationship, that Giannis would consider joining the Toronto Raptors. But obviously, Masai is not here anymore. Maybe that hurt their chances as soon as that happened. Who knows? But Giannis is saying all the right things. Maybe not about his teammates, because he did call them out recently and say they were being selfish. I think it was coming off the loss to the OKC Thunder. No one looks good against the Thunder unless it's the Raptors, mind you. But I think that was kind of an inopportune time to start calling out your team. You're playing the reigning NBA champions. But he hasn't formally come out and said he wants to leave Milwaukee. There was those reports that they at least inquired about that over the summer, and he kind of made it known perhaps that the New York Knicks were his favorite should he ultimately be traded. But again, he hasn't come out and said, I want to be moved by the Milwaukee Bucks. Everyone is just under this impression that he should go, because if he stays, the Bucks are just going to continue being in this stalemate. They're a bad basketball team as currently constructed with Giannis at the forefront. They're owing Damian Lillard so much money because of that stretch provision just to get him off the team. I think the last time I checked, they're 3 games out of the play-in tournament bracket in the Eastern Conference. Like, I know Giannis can kind of put you into that top 4 mix. He's probably the best player in the Eastern Conference currently, but Milwaukee is still kind of out of the race. They have a lot of ground to make up in the win-loss column. And I like Ryan Rollins. Like, he's probably going to be in the mix for most improved player, but if he's your second best guy, because Miles Turner's regressed. He's not the same guy he was in Indiana on that NBA Finals journey that they made within 1 game of winning it all. And Kevin Porter Jr., is your number 2 scorer, like that's not a recipe for success in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
So obviously, for reason, and of course, we're recording this on Tuesday, January 27th. There's been no trades because I think everyone is kind of just having their hand on the button, waiting for Milwaukee to figure out what they want to do with Giannis. Because if anything comes from that, then a lot of other moves are going to kind of follow suit. But at the same time, where would Giannis even go? And right now, there's only one team that makes sense, and it's the team that he wants to go to. It's the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks have kind of floundered as of late. They're kind of not looking like the championship team that we all envisioned them to be. They've dealt with some injuries throughout the course of the season, of course, but Karl Anthony Towns has taken a step back, and he's probably, even with his slight regressions, the best player, superstar caliber player that Milwaukee could, realistically get in a package for Giannis. And if that trade is going to happen, it's either New York or bust as far as I'm concerned. I could see like a sleeper team like Miami. Miami isn't afraid of doing anything, kind of throw themselves into the mix as well. But for right now, if Milwaukee's moving Giannis, it's going to be to New York. And realistically, that's what they should do.
It's funny you mentioned Miami because I think I saw Giannis was on a podcast or a stream or something with I Show Speed. He's that streamer for YouTube. And they were talking about, where to live and taxes and stuff like that. And before Speed even brought it up, I think Giannis just went into it and was like, you have a house in Florida? And Speed's like, yeah, I don't have a house in Florida. And Giannis is like, yeah, taxes, right? Like free taxes, like no taxes. And he's like, yeah. Like we can do that here or Dubai or wherever. And the second he said that, I was like, he's going to Miami. Like he's thinking taxes wise. He's like, I know where to go, where to save myself money. And it might be Miami. I agree with you in the sense that I don't think they'll be trading him. I think the power is entirely in Giannis's hands when it comes to being traded. If I'm the Bucks, I'm throwing anything at him. You want money, you want my firstborn, you want the city, you want to be prime minister, like whatever you want, like I'm throwing everything at you. But on the other side, I think if Giannis wants to go out and if he does make that, even if he were to go out there and let's say if he were to say like, I want to be moved and I want to see what I can do, I still think that they will get a good package back for Giannis because teams will be lined up to go to that fire yard sale. They'll make sure they have the best packages, the best guys ready for that. So I think in that sense, he does make it quite obvious, like not obvious, but he does make it quite like, I would say, suspicious whenever he talks. Like kind of comes off as he's talking in riddles where he's like, I could stay or I could go or I don't know what I want to do or whatever. So I think he doesn't do himself any favors either when he goes and talks to the media and he leaves like a little bit clues for the imagination. In the long term, in the grand scheme of things for I would say Milwaukee, it's in their best interest to keep him in the best way possible. And how you mentioned the roster as well, I just don't think they've built the best roster around him. Back in the day when you had Middleton next to him and that version of a team, that was what he needed. And that's what made, even without Giannis during that era, they would thrive. He would be out injured and they'd have no problem beating opponents without him. But as of right now, not only does this team need him, but they need to rebuild this team around him if they want to not just win something, but also keep him, I would say.
It's so hard to win an NBA championship. We're going through this string of parity where we're having a unique champion every year since the Raptors won in 2019. So the fact that the Bucks were able to get into that mix and hoist the Larry O'Brien trophy for the first time since like the Lou Alcindor era, that's huge. And Giannis is always going to be one of the greatest players in franchise history, if not the greatest, which I think he is, of course. But at the same time, all good things have to come to an end. I think the Bucks have taken this core around Giannis as far as it can go. Chris Middleton's no longer there. Brook Lopez is now in LA. Drew Holiday is no longer a Buck. There's just nothing there around him that would invoke any sort of confidence in him. And like you were alluding to with like the riddles and whatnot, yeah, sure, maybe he doesn't speak his mind forthright, but I think you can kind of get the vibe from him that he's ready for change. And if there was ever a time to do it when you can get the draft capital or get a young piece or two for him, I think you have to do it. Build towards the future. You're not competing for a title anytime soon.
I don't want to be a dead horse either, but I want to ask you, Ja Morant, do you think he's going to be moved after the trade deadline, or is he still going to be in Memphis and terrorizing people in the city of Memphis?
I think he's gone. I think Memphis is just desperate to do it at this point. I think he's ready to go. I think it's been evident ever since the coaching change that he's just not on board with what Memphis is selling him. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is their guy. You know, they got a good pick with Coward in the draft. He's looking like a really good player. I mean, as someone who bets on player props through OddsShark, I mean, they had friggin' Cam Spencer last night. He's become a John Stockton-esque guy, dishing double-digit assists all of a sudden. So if they need someone to run the point for now, they can kind of get away with it with Spencer. But Morant, going back to kind of like the Miami point, I think the Heat would be a perfect situation for him. They have Davion Mitchell, former Raptor, who has kind of blown up in South Beach. He's looked really good, but I don't know if he's a starting point guard on a championship caliber team. And at this point, I don't know if Ja Morant's even at this point, because he's also regressed. Guy can't shoot. Guy can't defend. His athleticism is tapered off, which you can kind of attribute to injuries at this point too. But the Miami Heat have the infrastructure in place to kind of get him on board with what they're doing. The Heat have always been, you know, a top tier organization from the top to the bottom. One of the greatest coaches in basketball, and Eric Spoelstra. Obviously, you have Pat Riley calling the shots as well. Morant needs that at this stage of his career. And again, it's kind of similar to what we're doing with Giannis in Milwaukee. Like, it's just some things just happen to come to an end. The Morant era in Memphis was great while it was great. And when it's not great, that's when people start pointing fingers and saying, you know, is this even worth it with Morant's suspensions that he's had, the injury time that he's missed? What else can you do at this point? And Miami has assets. They have guys, they have young pieces. They have I'm probably butchering his name, Kaspers Jakusionis or whatever his name is. And if I butchered it, sorry. I didn't look up my pronunciations ahead of time. But they have guys that they can move to Memphis. And Memphis is kind of in that kind of, you know, rebuilding, retooling mode that Toronto was in right now. And they're in the Western Conference where they just need to kind of, you know, figure out whether they want to get into that play-in picture, into that top 6 mix in the West, or just bottom out entirely. And Morant would kind of expedite that process.
I kind of like the idea of getting Morant somewhere where he's going to be held accountable. And I think there's only a few or you know, franchises that actually do that hold their players accountable, that have the staff and the system set in place to not just get the best out of their players, but also, you know, kind of, I would say, like, let them know that there's discipline to be had, there's respect to be had, there's like a certain public image to worry about and stuff. And I think in that sense, you're right. Miami would be perfect for that, given Pat Riley, given Eric Spoelstra. On the other side, if you know, Pop was still there, I would say Spurs would have been great for him too. They would have, you know, whooped him into shape right away. We don't really have the best sample size for him anymore. Recently, watching him play basketball, I don't think any team would think it's worth it to take on the headache, because there's a lack of talent there now as well. I do think if he were to play consistently, I think that's a problem as well. As you mentioned, is injuries, but also the fact that you're not playing consistently, you're getting suspended left, right, and center. That's going to cause rust. That's going to cause you to lose a part of your game. It's just how it goes. We've seen that in the playoffs. The more time they have off, the worse they are when they're back. The less time they have off, the better they are when they're playing, you know? So it's just that factor of it too. So I think it's just a matter of which team thinks that they can turn him around and get the best out of him, because they believe the best is still there. I think Miami is great for that. But I guess we can't move on without talking about the Raptors at this point. They got the trade deadline coming up. We talked about this again, beating a dead horse, but we can't not go into it deeply, knowing the Raptors and their history with the trade deadline. I know this team, and with under the Masai, you know, era, nothing ever happened in February. Nothing ever happened in February. You would have to wait until the evening at 3 o'clock in the morning in July or something for a Shams email or, you know, notification to go out and say, oh my God, Masai just made a groundbreaking trade. And that's what I'm used to. But I would say as of right now, the Raptors are in a position where maybe they don't really need to make any trades. The only position I see for myself is probably obviously it's the center position, but I just wonder, if you are giving something up for that, what are you losing in depth to get more depth for center at that point as well?
I'm agreeing with you from last week, where I was kind of giving you grief, Noor, where when you said, I just don't think the Raptors are going to do anything at the trade deadline. Like, they have made moves, like big moves at the trade deadline in the past. And my mind goes to, you know, in the 2019 championship season when they acquired Marc Gasol from the Memphis Grizzlies. They gave up Valanciunas and CJ Miles, and I think it was DeLon Wright was the rest of that package. And that helped them propel them to the championship in 2019, which was a huge deal. I don't think that type of trade exists right now. And I'm starting to kind of lean in your favor where it's like, especially after that Western Conference road trip, again, if that had fallen to the wayside and we came back with a losing record on that account, maybe they'd be more, open to getting rid of some of these guys like Pearl and like Barrett. I don't think any of those guys are going at this point because I just don't think the market is really that strong right now beyond the Giannis's and the Davises and the Morants that we've been talking about. I think there are options for making kind of like an under the radar deal. Like you have Ochai Abaji's expiring contract, maybe link that together with a second round pick, see if there's like a backup center out there. A couple of names that we talked about last week, Goga Badotse with the Orlando Magic or Nick Richards with the Phoenix Suns would fill that void at the 5 spot that the Raptors have right now. We were kind of sucking up to Sandro Mamu not that long ago and saying how much of a revelation he's been, but he's not a 5. He's more of a 4. He's not a rim protector. He can stretch the floor with his shooting, but he's not blocking shots or you're not pairing him off with a Duren or a Towns in the East. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. You need that big, bulky center, the paint clogger, get you like 6-7 rebounds off the bench, maybe block a shot or two. Those are the guys I'd be interested in at this point. But it's not like the shape-shifting move that all of a sudden makes Toronto, puts them with Detroit and New York. The standings may say one thing, but once the playoffs start and you start getting into these best of 7s, I think we're really going to see what Toronto's made of.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm going to just keep jumping off of my last point last week. I just don't think they'll be making any moves. I think there's been a lot of times during the trade deadline, especially I would say post-COVID, where teams have waited for the Raptors to make a move first. Like it's been completely quiet all of Feb, and then they're waiting for the Raptors to do something because, we had OG there, we had Fred there, we had Siakam there, we had these core amazing guys who were kind of just running the trade deadline at that point. Like they were the ones who every team was lining up for. The Raptors were waiting to see like what they would bring forward and what package they wanted to have the most. But I think right now, like you said, there's not that need currently. There's a need for the center position, as you said as well. But I think in terms of what's out there's not much you can get back. And even if you make a case for Anthony Davis, I feel like you would be giving up so much to get back for him. And with that depth gone and him coming over and not being able to play, let's say, however many games due to injury, then not only have you lost that depth, but you've also lost a center guy and Anthony Davis as well. So I think at this rate, their best position is to stay put and just see what these guys can do and give them more sample sizes. Let's see them play more games. Let's see them do what they do. And maybe we'll be able to tell. At that point, you'll have someone else open up throughout the league. Maybe a better fit will be there for us later on. But I think currently right now, they're not in a position to they're not in a hand-holding position, or their hands are not tied currently. So they can kind of just sit back, watch the market, see what opens up, to see what the packages are. And it's completely different in comparison to the last few years, where I think they took too long with Pascal Siakam. He had to be traded a long time ago, but they waited a while to see what they can do with him. I would say he was here a year too long, even for him. And then at that point, their hands were tied. They had to make the decision during the trade deadline. We got absolutely nothing back for him. Bruce Brown, I will cry right now. But the 2 first-round picks were great. Thank God for that. Shout out CMB. But as of right now, they're not in that position. They're not in the hands tied, need to make a move. We're going to lose this guy whether we don't make a move position right now. And the Raptors, we know they're not risk assessors. They don't go out there and make super risky moves unless they are sure it's going to pan out for them.
Yeah, Kawhi Leonard, yeah, that was still a shot in the dark based on his injury history. But this trade wasn't a trade deadline move, but it's still considered to be one of the greatest trades in Toronto Raptors history. It's the draft night trade when we moved Anton Jameson for Vince Carter. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because on Monday, Vince Carter celebrated his birthday. And I made a little bit of a post wishing him a happy birthday, which you can check out on North of the Ark's Instagram page. But Noor, I want to ask you, just because Vince was such a polarizing figure in Toronto Raptors history, is there a moment that sticks out as perhaps the defining moment of his tenure here? Or what's just the best Vince Carter moment in franchise history that you can think of off the top?
Franchise history. Would this fall under franchise history? The 2000 Sydney Olympics dunk of death? Like, can this just be about Vince Carter? It can count, right? It was still his Raptors tenure, kind of. It was not with the Raptors, but still, that, like, completely that. I just rewatched that the other day. The way he handled that ball, you see his athleticism completely on display at its finest. And my favorite part about after that actually was Kevin Garnett coming up to him and hyping him up and just, not understanding how that happened, because it's Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett has seen it all. He's done it all. He's done everything. And for him to be completely shocked by Vince Carter in that moment was just absolutely amazing. I think there's so many crazy moments for Vince, especially if you're a Raptors fan. There's so much that you can talk about, but to have that one specific defining moment that I keep going back to where I remember it's just him with that dunk and then Kevin Garnett losing his mind afterwards as well. What do you think, Chris? I think you were actually probably watching more during his era in the Raptors. I was a little bit more in the soccer side at that point.
Are you calling me old, Noor? What the heck? I thought we were tight. I know I'm old.
I just followed it. I was watching soccer.
The grades aren't showing. Of course. I'm just teasing you, of course. But yeah, Vince had so many incredible moments wearing a Raptors jersey, the dunks at the Air Canada Center, the 360s, his showcase in the 2000 slam dunk contest in the Bay Area where he went through the legs, stuck his arm in the net. Those were huge moments. But just a quick story. I used to work for the Toronto Raptors game operations department way back when. I kind of did a thing out of high school where I came on board. I was rolling T-shirts. I was going in the stands, the whole 9 yards, whatever they asked of me. I was just happy to be there. But the first year that I started was in 2006. And that was leading into the 2007 playoffs where we matched up with the New Jersey Nets in the opening round of the playoffs where Vince Carter was. It was coming off that trade. We got rid of Carter. We got Alonzo Mourning, who never came here, Aaron Williams, one of the biggest blunders, not in just Raptors history, but in NBA history as a whole. And kind of going back to the wrestling conversation we had at the start of the show, Vince was the most hated athlete in Canada by leaps and bounds. It was like pro wrestling heat. Every time he touched the basketball, he was booed out of the building. People were throwing slurs at him, as respectful as possible, nothing that necessarily crossed the line. But people wanted him dead. Hopefully not literally, but he was just, so people were ready to jump on the court and just kind of like tear him a new one, so to speak. And it was the most incredible experience for me, being as young as I was, being able to kind of roam the courtside area, hear these reactions, see how people were kind of projecting their hate towards him. And then fast forward, 7, 8 years later, Vince Carter comes back to Toronto as a member of the Memphis Grizzlies. The team had been experiencing some success at the time. They were a consistent playoff team at that point, and they play that video at Scotiabank Arena, like the tribute video that they do for all the former players. And the Raptors are on the court. They're giving him a standing ovation. People in the crowd are giving him a round of applause as well. And Vince just tears up and he loses it. His mom's sitting behind the net with Nav Badia. She's getting emotional as well. And that was just everything coming full circle. All the healing had been complete. Fans had gotten over, the trials and tribulations that came with the end of his initial tenure with the team. We forgot about the trade. Time heals all. It was just an incredible moment for someone like me who grew up a Vince Carter fan, had the poster in my bedroom, so did my little brother. And the fact that Toronto was able to come together and be like, you know what, let's just appreciate the good times that we had with this guy. He was our first superstar, helped put us on the map. So yeah, just an unbelievable moment. And you can't put a price on moments like that where it evokes such emotion, whether it's the hate against the Nets in the playoffs or his return as a member of the Memphis Grizzlies, just really good stuff. And before we sign off here, because we are going a little bit long, I did want to play this quick game with you, Noor, because I'm such a social media addict. I see so many other accounts doing this. I'm like, why the hell aren't we doing it? So it's called a blind ranking, where I'm going to throw 5 names at you, 1 through 5, and you're going to rank them 1 through 5, but you're not going to know the names that I'm going to be throwing at you immediately after. And this category, we're looking at famous Toronto Raptors duos. Maybe not dynamic duos on the court, but players that were connected in some way, shape, or form. So I'm going to throw these at you, and 1 through 5, you rank them. Maybe just give me a quick spiel on why you have them where you do. And I'm going to start off with this. Our first pairing, Pascal Siakam and Jakob Poeltl.
Man, can't start off with Siakam and Jakob Poeltl. And I have to rank them now in top 5.
Sure
Man,
do.
gosh. Okay. I think I know what my first would be right now, but this is like, okay. Siakam and Pirtle, I would say just because I know we know them. Like, they grew up together in the G League. They came to Toronto Raptors. They had the full camaraderie, the brotherhood. They're in pictures together. Spicy P and Pirtle. Spicy P and Yuck. Okay, I'm going to go with number 3. And I go with number 3 because I already think I know one of them, which we all are going to know one of them. And I think that one's going to take the top, but I can't think of anybody else that could maybe trump Siakam and Pirtle. But I would say, just to be safe, I'll put them at number 3 right now. I might cry about this later, so please be warned.
3 is a safe spot, so don't worry. 3, people usually go for 3 right off the bat, gives you the flexibility for 5 and 1, 2. But the next pairing I have here, Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady.
Disclaimer. Okay, before I rank this, disclaimer, guys, everybody. As I said, Chris is not old. It's just during that time, I was watching soccer. I wasn't really watching basketball. I took over like right when Masai took over, right before I would say the F Brooklyn era, We the North era. I started watching during 2012, right when the world was about to end. I'm like, yeah, I might as well walk the Raptors now. The Mayan calendar says it's about time. But because I understand, I've watched, their highlights growing up. I know their impact on this team. It's Tracy McGrady. It's Vince Carter. I'm going to place them number 2. I know some people will place them number 1. I get that. I'm already arguing with myself, but I pretty much clearly, right? I know people will place them number 1. I get it. It's just, once again, it's when I was watching. So I understand and respect that duo. They will go number 2 for me, Chris. What's next? Guys, don't kill me, please.
All right. So we have the number 2 and 3 spot locked up. Next up, Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram.
Based off how the team's doing right now, I will give them number 4. I don't think this is more like a brotherhood kind of, fun relationship. It's more just like their activity together on the court together. And based off of that, yeah, let's give them 4. We're still watching this happen. So they might drop, they might go higher. So right now they're at number 4 safely. Who's
it's
taking
like you've played
1?
This game before. You're handling it pretty well, I must say. Like,
really?
Tip of the cap to you, Noor. You're doing quite well. Next up on the list, Chris Bosh and TJ Ford.
I have number 5 open, right?
You do have number 5.
Yes, we're going to throw them at number 5.
Number 5. Okay, so you're leaving the number 1 spot open. I may throw you a curveball, and it might be like Andrea Bargnani and Jorge Garbajosa for all you know. Or you're kind of rolling the dice here.
You know you are.
I could be setting you up. I could be doing you dirty, Noor. But I think you did all right here. Your number 1 spot by default, Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan.
My Chloe and D-Row. I'm happy. I'll take that. There you go. Did I do well by your standards? I know that I can't give you the questions back, Chris, but by your standards, was it like close to your list as well, or am I far off?
I must say, yeah, I think you did quite well. I maybe would have switched Pascal and Jakob with Scotty and Brandon just because I am a Scotty Barnes guy. But again, you didn't know who was going to be coming afterwards. So the fact that you went in blindly, which is the whole point of this game, and the list turned out the way that it did, you did quite well. And for the viewers out there, if you liked this and want to see us do more games, leave a comment down below. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. But Noor, take us home. Well, like Chris said, guys, give us ideas. Let us know what you guys want to see. Let us know what you want to talk to us about, what you want us to talk about. We're at your service at any point. This has been North of the Arc, Toronto Raptors, and an NBA show given to you by Jackpot City Casino. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much.